This is Gareth Southgate, and this is the Three Lions podcast.
Hello and welcome to the Three Lions podcast. My name is Russell Osborne and this is an independent England football supporters podcast. I hope you're well. With Malta and North Macedonia now both out of the way, we can start to really think about next year's summer trip to Germany for the European Championships of 2024. The draw of which is on the 2nd of December. I'll be taking a look at that shortly afterwards. But you've joined me for another in this series of Your England Journey. Cast your minds back a year. Yes, it's really been a year. The Qatar World Cup. It began on the 20th of November and we began our campaign on the 21st. Against Iran. Yep, you remember it now, don't you? Well, for my guest on this episode, this was his first tournament with England. And as it was one I didn't manage to get to, it's always good to hear about it. As always, if you want to share your stories of following England, please do get in touch. Drop me a line in the usual way. You can do it. Social media. Just search Three Lions Podcast, or you can email me direct, threelionspodcast@gmail.com. All right, let's crack on. Hope you enjoy it. Now, there's good times, sad times, fun times, but they are your times. So it's another one of our England journeys, and welcome to it on the Three Lions podcast. Bristol Rovers and England fan. Hello to Matt. Hello, Matt.
Hi, Russell. Thanks for having me on here.
No, very welcome. Thanks for joining us. You're over in Bristol way, aren't you?
Yes.
Nice one. You're a Rovers fan.
That's right.
Good times there. With some bad times.
Yeah. Especially in recent years. That's been where most of the good times have been.
Good stuff. Well, this series, we're looking at your England journey, and you've got a few stories that you're going to tell us. But where did England come into your life? When do you remember first encountering the England team?
So, as a proper introduction, it would have been during the 2010 World Cup, because that was the point where I got into football. Obviously, there was a lot of talk within school, in my family, and I actually was watching England versus USA. And from there, history was a building block, and here we are.
I mean, I remember that World Cup and England-Germany. England-USA. That was the first game. I think it was a Rob Green howler, wasn't it?
Yes. But then I think he also made a great save, so sort of evened it out. Yeah. But even though England got a bit further in 2014, I do think this was my least favourite World Cup out of all the ones I saw. But having, of course, watched a number of England games on the TV, and of course, being a fan, I did want to go and see it at some point. My parents didn't have a particular interest to take me or get someone to go with me. But eventually I got to go to the England vs Kosovo game in 2019 in Southampton.
Ah, yeah.
But what I certainly can remember was that I was behind the goal that had 7 out of the 8 goals that was scored at.
I'm just trying to think now, because I was at that game and I remember, what was it, 5-3, wasn't it?
Yes.
I remember I was behind the goal, and I remember one goal being up the other end. And if you say there was 7 out of 8 goals scored, there must have been but you must have been at the same end as me, I reckon.
Yeah, potentially. I know all of England goals were at that end, and the 2 second half goals were at that end as well. I was like near the front, but back enough where I could stand throughout the game.
So that was your first England home game, was it, against Kosovo down at Southampton?
Yes.
That was a good start, that one. Have you got to Wembley?
Yes, I did. This was in 2021. Before then, I'd been to see England and I'd been to Wembley, but I hadn't done the two combined.
Okay.
And before I went to this game, it was about 2020, 2021, where I decided I want to go to the World Cup. I want to double down on doing this, given it was the last 32-team World Cup. And the competition was not going to be the same for tickets compared to a summer tournament in Europe, because a lot of the England fans have families, it's Christmas, so forth.
So we're talking Qatar here being the aim.
Yes, and I bring this up because of the budget-related reasons. Of course, it meant I'd be saving something £100 per month, as two of your past England fans had said, and they were going to Qatar. It meant I only went to 3 away games for Bristol Rovers this season. But during the start of my saving and going to the World Cup, I did go to 2 England games. The first being England versus Albania, that 5-0 victory.
Yeah.
Maguire scoring, Kane got a hat-trick. I'm not sure who got the other goals, but England were in blue, Albania were in white. Had a good view, great night, and 2 England games, and I'd seen a total number of goals of 13.
Glut of goals. They're obviously a lucky omen then.
Yes. And the first two opponents were teams that were from like southwest Balkan area, and
of course,
they had both of them had alliances. I saw Albania fans at the England-Kosovo game, and I might have seen some Kosovo fans at England versus Albania.
Yeah, there is a special sort of allegiance between those two nations. Couple of good games to go to there. Yeah, got fond memories of that Kosovo one. I've got to be honest, although I went to the Albania one, it's not one of those ones that sort of trips off the tongue. I've got to be honest.
I took the opportunity to see the statue. I managed to meet the band that I don't know if they're still the current existing band players, but they were at that time. Before going to the World Cup, the other game I went to was England versus Hungary at Molineux, which, of course, wasn't good. But I think it helped Southgate realise that there were certain players that shouldn't be playing. And by then, I'd seen an aggregate score of 10-7 to England in terms of free games and the number of goals.
Yeah, well, as I say, you were a lucky omen, and then you went to the Hungary game. So
maybe being at the Molineux was a bad omen, because didn't Hungary also win at England in the last century at the Molineux?
Yeah, there was a famous game where Hungary turned up. That was what do they call them? The Mighty Magyars is what they called Hungary back then. Yeah, well, hopefully though those games will be they're in the past, although looking forwards now off the back of that game, obviously in the Nations League, in its next incarnation, will be in League B, thanks to that result. There'll be some interesting games to be played on that journey. But you'd obviously got the bug for following England. You'd seen them on the telly. You'd got those early memories of the 2010 World Cup, 2014 as well.
2018 at that point was probably my favourite. Yeah, it was my favourite sporting event I'd ever witnessed, and I think this Qatar one's on par with that.
What were your thoughts about Qatar, like in the lead up to it? Because obviously there was a lot of negativity around it. Did that sort of put you off?
I think the very controversial parts, it was one of those where I had to like keep an open mind whether it was right or wrong. Of course, also did see the pros that were good about it. The certain controversy surrounding the human rights, it's definitely one of them where there's some stuff going on there is probably bad, but there are some people that will make it seem worse than what it really was.
Yeah.
I feel like when it aimed to people being put off by the World Cup, judging from what I've seen within Qatar, I felt like that had a much bigger effect on Denmark and Germany in terms of how their fan attendances came. Maybe the Netherlands as well, although I thought they did okay.
Yeah.
But I would expect England. There would be some England fans to be put off by it, but I would say for the people that didn't come, and I think England were probably the best out of the European nations in terms of fans. But I think more people would have not been going for family, work, and of course it was a lead up to Christmas.
Yeah.
At least that's what I was perceiving from the point of view from the England side.
Yeah, that's fair enough. To be honest, they are the major reasons that I wasn't able to go. But I like the way that you went. You said you went with an open mind. So how did you go about? I mean, obviously you said you'd saved and you'd sacrificed some Bristol Rovers games to go to it, and sort of how did it all sort of come about? How did you get your tickets and all that sort of thing? Where did you decide to base yourself?
So before people were good to go to the country, there were like 3 steps that had to be sorted. There was the tickets, there was accommodation, and then there was the hire card, which is the document that Ben Williams had talked about on a previous episode.
Yeah.
So that's the 3 things you needed in order to gain entry to Qatar. From my perspective, when buying my tickets, of course I went for England versus Iran, the first one. England versus USA, that was a must-watch game for me because of the culture rivalries and things like that. The third game I didn't actually buy tickets for, which we didn't know by then whether it was going to be Scotland, Ukraine, or Wales. Because my thinking was England most likely going to get 6 points, and if it's potentially a dead rubber, then I could probably do with using that money elsewhere, which it didn't turn out to be a dead rubber, but I still made use of watching the game, which I'll get to later. Of course, I bought a round of 16 game, and even the final, which both were conditional. The final was something like £530 for the category I went for.
Yeah.
And I also did manage to get a ticket for Ghana versus Uruguay, and I hoped to get Serbia versus Switzerland, but didn't quite get around to bidding for that one. But as for my journey, I started out by something like the afternoon. I went over to get the mega bus from Bristol to Heathrow Airport. I listened to 1 or 2 of your podcasts on the way.
Very kind, thank you.
And whilst waiting, ex-England player Gabby Agbonlahor and a few representatives from TalkSport were there.
All right.
Saw a couple of Ecuador fans there as well. Didn't get much sleep on the plane, probably about 30 minutes worth of what was about 7-hour journey. I'd arrived in Qatar. This was the first time I'd been to a country outside of Europe. Out of my family, only my mum had been outside of Europe before me. Being in the airport, of course, saw a number of England fans, saw some Welsh fans. After collecting my bags, I seen Mexico, Ecuador. When I go out the entrance, I see how different it is. I feel how different this is.
Yeah.
Seeing more so when I went further towards the metro where I can see the sat. And I feel like weather-wise, Qatar during that time, well, in November, it was warm during midday, maybe probably morning as well. But after 2 p.m., it was like, I suppose you could say like end of May weather, where it's like, or it's shorts weather, but there's not the need to put any sun cream on.
Yeah.
And the place I stayed was a fan village with cabins.
Okay.
It seems like a great venue. They made the best of the shipping containers. They had a good offer of food stands, big screen, an option to play like other play sports such as like football, basketball, tennis, all that good stuff. It was a fascinating but fun place to base myself.
Yeah. Well, it must have been exciting to get to your first World Cup game. Tell us about England-Iran.
So I remember go to the metro station, take the train over, and upon getting towards the exit, the walk fairly long towards the escalators, not as long as in Education City Stadium, which that was a hell of a walk. But the one to Khalifa International Stadium was all right. Of course, seeing more Iran fans closer to the stadium. Weather was nice. There seemed to be the excitement seemed to be building. My England shirt, which was the same one used for the World Cup, and I had my Bristol Rovers flag with me. Before going in, I'd seen David from Gloucester. He was the man I would usually see whilst being out in Qatar. So I was sort of on my own, not really. I travelled alone and I'm staying alone, but a lot of the time when I was out, I'd often be with David from Gloucester, who he found me after I put on the forum anybody from the Southwest going to be at the World Cup.
Right.
I remember also there was a 50-something Iranian man who was sitting on a step, and he asked me for my numbers just so he could brag about Iran winning, just so, if that was to happen. And I think he's glad that I didn't take that offer, given what happened.
Yeah. Yeah.
After coming out the concourse and seeing the inside, seeing the seats, seeing the sun, I had to take some pictures, videos. It felt out like a sense of I'd made it.
Yeah.
Finding a place to put my flag up was, of course, very difficult, and it was also down to the fact that the security team only wanted flags like behind the goal and around the corners, so not so much around the middle.
Oh, right.
Unless, of course, you were holding it yourself. Before the game actually started, I saw the lineup. I said to the nearest guy near me that I was happy with everyone in that lineup except for Mason Mount. And he actually turned around and he had Mount on the back of his shirt. So, what a coincidence that was. I'm sure it probably wasn't much different feeling wise to what you might have experienced in your in the build up for your first England game, World Cup game.
Yeah. They're good memories to have and keep hold of.
Well, it's a game that I felt England were excellent in. Midfield was very dominant, and it was an Iran team that turned out to be not as good as I thought it'd be. I expected how they played against Wales to be something similar in terms of how they played against us. That first England goal headed from Jude Bellingham, that's the moment. Probably either that or possibly the Saka's first goal or Kane's goal against Senegal were probably the goals I'd celebrated most. And seeing Jude score against Iran, the first one I'd ever seen, that might be number one.
Yeah. What was the atmosphere like inside the ground with all the England fans?
And one chant that started to catch on, which was a new one, was Jingle Bells one, which ends with "Oh, what fun it is to see England win away."
Yeah.
There was a few Iranians that were there to protest that I saw afterwards, but it wasn't bothering much people, and it was great overall.
So, what were your plans for after then? Like, what was next?
That would be the USA game. The build-up would have been, I'd have spent a lot of time in Champions Sports Bar, and there's a lot of England fans, a lot of USA fans. Got to have some nice beers and burger and chips. Probably my sort of way of building up to an England football game. On the Metro line, went up to Lusail, which was the most northern stop. Got to see Lusail Stadium in its gold lit. Took the bus up, and then got to see Al Bayt Stadium, which is my favourite stadium, where the game was playing. I'd say this game might have been the best view I had. I was very satisfied.
Cool. Sadly, though, the game didn't live up to the expectations, did it?
No, certainly not.
Was it? Well, I mean, the Americans, did they give a good account for themselves?
I'd say so. I feel like atmosphere-wise, England had like one big end behind the goal that was like generating the majority of the atmosphere. There were more England fans over behind the USA goal than there were vice versa.
Right.
But they also had like pockets around the stadium that were joining in the atmosphere. Of course, they would have enjoyed the match a lot more than we did.
So you came away from the America game, as we said, it wasn't the most entertaining of games, and certainly wasn't the result that we wanted. But Wales were the last game in our group for us, and as you've already told us, you decided not to get a ticket for that game. So what happened where were you for the Wales game?
So I went over to the main fan zone to watch the game. Before going there, I was with David, my friend. I did have a chance to go to get a ticket, but for the price that was available, I thought not fully worth it to go. But the game was still worth it enough for me to buy a beer and watch the game at the fan zone.
What was the fan zone like?
It was a good place. The museum was also there as well, which I went in to see during the two match day kickoffs at that time. I remember what they decided to do because it was because there were two games going on at the same time. In this case, the USA-Iran game. What the fan zone had done was they had a big screen and they had other screens around the fan zone. And this time they decided to put Iran versus USA on the big screen, and every other screen was playing Wales versus USA. So I went to more by the food area. At the time, I was like the only England fan there. I can remember that England were decent in the first half, but the second half, things really got hot into gear. They were steamrolling Wales. Foden was fantastic. Rashford doing well as well. Both making strong claims that he should be starting. Foden should have already been starting regardless. It was enjoyable to watch, and I know I certainly celebrated even more for the second goal because I had England down for winning 2-0. I did get to see two England fans around my age group from London after the game.
Right.
But whilst watching, I was like the only fan around the area.
Just trying to think. Did it? It ended 3-0 in the end, didn't it?
Yes,
So
it did.
Your prediction, you're just 1 out.
Yeah, or it's better 1 out with a bigger margin.
Well, yes, yeah. Well, did you didn't have any money on it though, did you?
No.
Good stuff. So yeah, that was the Wales England game in the fan park. Well, I mean, I guess there's a lot of other nationalities there though, was there?
Yes, ranging from Morocco, Tunisia, Saudi Arabia, and various other nations. And of course, it would be more randomized depending on the match day kickoffs.
Obviously, the Moroccan fans were quite distinctive, and they got a lot of publicity on the telly here back in England. Did you encounter a lot of the Moroccan fans? They seem to be quite not boisterous, but they certainly made the most of being there, didn't they?
Oh yes, and I think Tunisia were also just as good. Both of them top 5. In the case of Morocco, they of course their presence was very heavily felt.
Right. So on the notes that you've sent me, you said that there was the Group E drama. Group E consisted of who was it? Japan and Germany, Spain,
Costa Rica.
Yeah. So what happened there?
So this was one of these groups where at this point everybody had a chance of going through or out. And during the 2 first halves, Spain and Germany 1-0 up. Not quite as exciting at that point. I positioned myself so, of course, I could see the big screen which had Japan versus Spain on, but also I stood as far back so I could see one of the other screens where Costa Rica and Germany were playing.
Oh, right.
As you might remember, Japan turned the game around. There was excitement around the place, including from me. And then, of course, with the Costa Rica versus Germany game, it felt like that was a big roller coaster of emotion, excitement, surprise when you were seeing Costa Rica equalize, Costa Rica go in front, and even when Germany scored, made it 3-2, I could feel it.
Yeah. Were there lots of sort of German fans around you?
Not that I recall.
No.
I could only remember of all the 4 mentioned teams seeing Japan fans of who I had a selfie with afterwards. But going back to the Group E drama, after the full-time scenes, I could remember a group of Japan, Morocco fans, both of whom had topped their group that night, and neutrals all singing, bouncing, dancing together. Well, man, what a night that was.
Sounds a good one. So you got a ticket for Ghana, Uruguay as well, didn't you?
Yeah, that's right. The first rematch since the 2010 controversial drama. Yeah, and he was captain that day as well.
Whereabouts was this game?
It was in Al Janoub Stadium, so it would have been the most southern of all these stadiums. And as well as the fixture itself, it was also one of the stadiums I wanted to go to. So I'm glad I ticked it off. And of course, the highlight was the moment when South Korea came from behind to make it 2-1 in the other game. The neutrals, such as myself, were stunned and taking it all in. The Ghana fans chanting in Korea because if they couldn't go through, they wouldn't let Uruguay go through instead. So did
the Korean score come through on the big screen? Or was it
yes.
Did it? So everyone knew.
Yes. And or maybe some people had found out just before, but and funnily enough, I managed to keep track when Portugal and South Korea had scored the earlier goals, but when it went to 2-1, it came completely out of nowhere. the few Uruguay fans and nearby me were, of course, in silence. And then after that, they were like kind of screaming for them to score as if everything did depend on it, which they needed the third goal to get through and they couldn't.
So it ended 2-0 to Uruguay, but it come at the end of the game. They ended up in third place, didn't they? Ghana in fourth place.
Yes. And South Korea went through on goals scored.
Wow. Amazing. So, I mean, there must have been a few sad Uruguayans dotted around there.
Yeah. Yeah. They seemed bummed out, if that's an appropriate term to use.
Yeah, no, that's cool. I mean, but the Ghanaian fans, they're always excitable, aren't they?
Yeah, bittersweet moment for them.
Yeah, absolutely. Kind of, despite the result, kind of got that 2010 result out of their system, I guess. So, following the Wales game that you said that you saw at the in the fan park, it meant that England were through to the round of 16 into the first knockout round, and they faced Senegal. You got yourself a ticket for that, had you?
Yes, I did. This was going to be one of these conditional tickets where if England got there, I'd have a ticket, but if not, I'd be refunded. Given that England had won the group, it meant England would be playing at the only stadium of the three that they didn't win in, Al Bayt Stadium, which meant I'd be doing pretty much the same routine as I did for the USA, going to Champions Sports Bar, which wasn't as busy but dominated by England fans. But in the stadium itself, I mentioned earlier that this, along with the Iran game, I went to Category 2 tickets for as opposed to Category 3. What I didn't mention for the Iran game was it worked when I did it for that game because the Khalifa International Stadium used to have a running track around it, so it meant there was going to be a big gap behind the goal. And also it helped that I was able to stand and join in the atmosphere easier. But in this case, it didn't really work out for me because I ended up being planted on the very side. Well, it was behind the goal, but like kind of it was just behind the corner flag.
Gotcha.
Couldn't stand up too much. But the pre-match atmosphere pretty good, and I guess before we get to the game, you've probably seen the dancing Senegal fans on the TV.
Yes, yeah, they were quite a spectacle, weren't they?
What I'd seen is even fairly early on, after they open the gates, when there's like a few fans just like walking around finding their place, towards near the corner, you could see that the dancing Senegal fans with their colours were already there set for the game.
Right. How early was this?
I'm not too sure, but it was at a point where most of what you could see around the stadium were the brown, black and white seats.
Empty seats, right. They were in there. They were keen, weren't they?
Yeah. So it put into perspective that they're already like set there before, even when almost everyone has come into the stadium.
Different mentality between sort of their way of getting into the game and say the English way of finishing a pint and getting in just on the national anthems.
Well, in this case, I was more referring to the small group of fans that you see on the TV. But the rest of them came in as normal.
So this was a game that England won 3-0. Took us a little while to get going, though, didn't it?
Yes, Senegal did bring some pressure. They did earn their right to be in this round, but clearly something was missing. They weren't that clinical with some chances, and of course, England did deserve the win. Won't deep too far into the game, but they just had more in them from a basic level.
Yeah, well, I mean, it was Jordan Henderson opened the scoring. Harry Kane got a goal just on half time, and then it was Bukayo Saka with the third goal in the second half. Henderson hasn't really scored many goals for England. I think he's only scored 3, and that might have been his second England goal. Harry Kane obviously is the main man, but Bukayo Saka, this was almost his tournament, wasn't it?
Yes, and he'd definitely made his mark from the performance against Iran. The interesting enough thing was, I think after that Wales game, we expected a front three of Rashford, Kane, Foden. Southgate decided to put Saka on the right, and it turned out that it worked. I can definitely remember Henderson and Saka's goals well, and knowing my angles and when I was celebrating them. The moment I remember most from this game was Kane's goal.
Right.
What I could remember was the ball was in our half, and there was some Senegal pressure, and it was closer to the end of the first half. So I was at a point where I could remember the ball going further forward, and Foden, Bellingham, both making runs, making forward passes, and I was like, "Oh, hang on!" And then, of course, the passing, the speed, the excitement from our area behind the goal. Then Kane places it nicely, and as well as my vocal celebrations, I was also in a position to run, which I did. I went up the stairs. I saw another England fan on the steps, which I decided to start a hug with, and another England fan had joined us, and it was a moment that summed up what England at a World Cup could do to England and fans together, no matter how well they know each other or not.
Wow, nice one. Yeah, I've been in that position at England games where your emotions just sort of take over, and that person next to you or behind you, there's high fives and hugs and all that. Yeah, no, it's a good feeling. So yeah, 3-0 through to the quarterfinals. Now, I know that you didn't get to this game. What were your thoughts? Were you thinking, "Oh, I want to stay. I want to get to the France game"? What was going through your mind, having seen the group games and the round of 16 against Senegal?
Well, I was clearly looking forward to the game, and by the time I'd got back, this was, of course, the thing I was looking forward to the most, especially given that it was so cold back home and I wasn't seeing a lot of people at that point. In some ways, I would have liked to have stayed more, but in some ways, it also made sense for me to go back because the contacts I had, barring one, were all going back at that point.
Right.
Post the group stage and the early knockouts, kind of comes a time where the festivity levels are stripped back a bit. I left about 2 days after the England game. It was a game where earlier in the tournament, I was thinking this is likely to be a France win. But closer to the time, it felt so 50-50 for me. I was like, drawing a penalties, maybe England win because there's a Pickford versus Lloris battle.
Okay, yeah. Were you back in Bristol then watching that?
Yes. I decided to go to a pub called The Anchor, a fairly modern pub with a lot of TV screens. At that point, I'd never seen England lose a game, so in such a tight game, it was definitely worth going there and then potentially staying at home to watch the semi-final, should it be that. But I can definitely... It was a game I felt that England played better than... Well, I expected a good performance, but to play better than France in the way we did and it only coming down to moments was impressive. Kyle Walker had, of course, became the only defender that was able to stop Mbappe at all. I definitely did feel like there wasn't much left to be desired. And on my way home, I probably had about 3 tears. That's kind of sort of how I was feeling.
It's a strange feeling when you've been to a World Cup and you come home and you're watching the games at home in like a more comfortable or a more familiar environment. I've certainly been in that position. But yeah, it wasn't to be.
But this was probably for those it applies to. This will be the first time they will have come back and actually been in the cold where it's like close to minus degrees.
Yes, yeah, it certainly was. Deepest winter, deepest December at the time, wasn't it? Yes. So Qatar done with. What were your plans for your England journey going forwards now? Where do you see yourself in the next few years? What are your plans?
So I'm going to go to the England versus Italy game. Not too sure on further than that. I feel like in terms of Euro 2024, I might go there, but my best chance is getting to the final or even any other games that take place in Berlin, because that's going to be where England have the biggest allocation, and therefore I've got the best chance of getting tickets there, because there's going to be a big market for tickets from the England supporters group.
Absolutely. If it's anything like the 2006 World Cup, which it certainly will be, there will be a big demand for England fans and England tickets over there.
Agreed.
Still worth going though for the atmosphere and just the experience, and even to, like, you've got a ticket for Ghana, Uruguay. If there's a possibility of getting a ticket for, I don't know off the top of my head, Denmark against Spain could be a good one. To experience the Euros in Germany, and then of course there's the World Cup in Canada, America, Mexico, a little further afield, isn't there? But Italy at home at Wembley is the next England game for you then, is it?
Yes.
We'll have to say hello when it comes round to that one.
I'll be up for that.
Matt, thank you very much for taking us through your England journey. There's certainly lots of highs, a couple of lows in there, but that's what your journey is all about and what sort of England puts us through, doesn't it?
Absolutely. And for all that we experienced in the early 10s, there's a great potential in the next Euros to have the biggest high since the 60s.
Let's hope so.
Thank you to Matt there. I caught up with him at the Italy game in October. Always good to put a face to the voice. So thank you very much for your time, mate. Apologies it took a while to get live, this one, as it were. There is so much going on in the next few weeks. Now, the Lionesses have got a couple of Nations League matches coming up. They will determine their fate in the competition. And as I mentioned at the beginning of this episode, the Euro draw is coming, and I'll have a pod on both the Lionesses and that Euro draw. I've also got a book review about a story of a player that just needs to be heard. That's coming soon too, along with more in the Your England Journey series. And I've still got more people to chat to about theirs. Just when you thought it had all gone quiet in the run-up to Christmas, I'll have a few gifts of my own to give you. So stay subscribed and you won't miss them. So until the next time, take care of yourselves. Cheers.